Color is everything in photography, and it's the number one element I look for when out taking photos, planning shoots, and I'm always tweaking during the editing process. Color is not just about the aesthetic, but when used right, it creates pleasing contrast for the human eye, invokes a positive or a negative feeling on an image, and plays a critical role in cultural heritage. But there's a reason why some colors integrated together work beautifully, while other colors look bad when mixed together. So today I want to explain why this happens, break down the principles behind color theory, provide tips on what to look for when you're out shooting, as well as how to tweak or save the colors in Lightroom to make your images feel powerful, balanced, and memorable. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website or a domain, check the link in the description down below, and let's jump right into what is color. This may seem like an easy answer to a silly question, but color in digital photography is made up of red, green, and blue, which is called primary colors. You may have heard of sRGB and Adobe RGB, which are important when shooting and when editing. sRGB is the most compatible color space across devices, making it ideal for web use and general sharing. On the other hand, Adobe RGB has a much wider color gamut, providing more color depth and detail. This makes it great for printing or commercial work, but it's less compatible with most screens. So if you export or use Adobe RGB and view it on an incompatible device, which can only display sRGB, you'll unfortunately see color distortion. But fortunately, if you do accidentally shoot in Adobe RGB or sRGB, you can easily change it during the exporting phase in Lightroom. And don't worry about the color space while editing. Lightroom always works internally in a universal color space called ProPhoto RGB. There are many different ways to manipulate the hue, the saturation, and luminosity of these colors in Lightroom, and this is why the RGB is represented in the tone curve and the color calibration. But before we jump into Lightroom, we first need to discuss temperature and tint, which is often referred to as white balance, which has a huge impact on color accuracy, or when used in a creative way, can impact a feeling on the image. For example, when you increase the warmth and add more magenta into the tint, this creates a rich, intense, and vibrant look, often used for sunsets, portraits, or even warm indoor scenes. This combination gives a more vintage or nostalgic feel. In contrast, if you reduce the temperature by adding more blue and green into the tint, this creates a cool, moody look that's often used in cinema. And just like manipulating the hues, the saturation, and the luminosity, white balance plays a huge role in how your final photo feels. And by mastering the tone curve or split toning in combination with white balance, you can achieve some very creative looks. Now guys, how colors are created, mixed, and manipulated digitally falls under what we call color theory. Color theory is a foundational knowledge that explains why certain colors look well together and how they interact with each other. It's a science behind how we create colors using the RGB model, and how tools like the tone curve, split toning, and color calibration in Lightroom gives us control over all of these colors. But understanding how colors interact and how they're manipulated is only part of the equation. The other part of color theory is how colors make us feel, which is why color psychology is so important. The psychology of color is critical in photography. It is definitely the primary tool I use to create a mood or a vibe in the images that I try to portray. For example, here is a portrait that I took here in the studio of my friend Lani. The red background combined with the black outfit conveys a message of energy and passion and intensity, while also carrying a negative association. And in contrast, here is a scene of a blue vending machine surrounded by snow. The cool tones of the blue machine and the soft white snow feel calm, clean, and surreal, which is almost the opposite of the energy and the intensity of the red portrait I showed earlier. But guys, in today's video, I'm not going to cover every single color, as that would just take way too long, and some colors are self-explanatory in terms of how they can make you feel. I would set aside some time to learn this. If you want a deeper breakdown, just pause the video and take a screenshot and learn this now. But how do we create contrast with colors and make sure our images feel balanced and avoid colors clashing together? Well, that's when color harmony comes in. Color harmony is all about using color combinations intentionally to create balance, contrast, or an aesthetic appeal. It's applying what we just learned in color theory to achieve visually pleasing results. And contrast is the key word here, as our eyes are naturally drawn to the most contrasty part of an image. Both high contrast and low contrast images are naturally pleasing to the human eye. The most common color harmony we see in photography, film, and art is complementary colors, which involves two colors that are directly opposite each other on the color wheel. Consider the classic teal and orange look, often used in cinema and was very popular in Instagram edits back in the day. For example, here's a photo I took in Italy of pasta and wine. The warm oranges of the pasta and the wine bottle pop against the cooler blue tones of the ocean. It's a classic complementary combination that's eye-catching, aesthetic, and has a pleasing contrast. Next, we have monochromatic color schemes, which involves using variations of a single hue. This can include different shades, tints, and tones, creating a cohesive, minimalistic, and elegant look. It's not just about black and white, any color can be used monochromatically. The key is keeping it within the same color family for a clean and minimalistic look. Next, we have something that's very similar to monochromatic colors called agnostic colors, which are colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. For example, here is a photo I shot of a luggage company called July in Brazil. The olive green of the luggage blends seamlessly with the yellow/green cactus, adhering to the natural green and yellow palette that feels warm and inviting with medium to low contrast. At the same time, I took a photo at 90 degrees to this cacti scene to capture split complementary colors. Split complementary colors add complexity by using one base color and two colors adjacent to its complementary color. It's like complementary colors but with more flexibility. This approach adds contrast without being too harsh or overwhelming, allowing for natural color combinations. And finally, the color harmony that holds the most contrast is triadic colors. This involves using three colors evenly spaced around the color wheel. This approach is all about creating a vibrant, high contrast but balanced look. It's definitely not the easiest to pull off, but can be really effective for creating energetic and colorful compositions. And you may have noticed that all of these colors of these examples that I've shown today aren't always shown as being exactly perpendicular or evenly spaced on the color wheel. But what matters most, guys, is how the colors interact and feel within the image, rather than just strictly following the theory. There's also colors that naturally work well with black and white. For example, black and red feels bold, intense, and dramatic, perfect for fashion or high energy scenes. Blue and white feels clean, crisp, and timeless. It conveys a calmness or professionalism, which works well for beach scenes, and that's why it's my personal favorite. And then lastly, we have gold and black, which gives off this feeling of luxury or a sophisticated feel, often used for upscale branding or editorial shoots. These color pairings work so well because they naturally enhance or complement each other. But what colors don't work well together? I've found that nearly all color combinations can work if used intentionally. Some people say that red and green look bad together, but I disagree. A red dress against a green background can look incredible. It's all about balance and intention. But what I have noticed is that mixing vibrant colors with pastels can feel off. If an image has high energy and a punchy look, all the colors should match that intensity, and if you're going for a much softer, muted vibe, keeping everything within a pastel or toned down range. So to break that down into one sentence, I think consistency is key. Mixing a bright neon color with something pastel can just feel jarring and off. Alright guys, that's everything about color theory and what to look for when shooting or planning an image. But editing is key to get the colors right, and we can use a variety of tools that we'll go over in today's video to tweak these colors to really reimburse the type of mood or feeling that we're trying to portray. But before we jump into Lightroom and show you how powerful manipulating colors is in Lightroom, I just want to quickly thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that helps you build a beautiful professional website that works for you. I've actually been using Squarespace for years to run my own wedding company, creativeculture.au. It's been my most successful lead generator and SEO magnet, giving me the best return on investment of my entire career. It's straightforward to build, easy to maintain, and looks amazing across all devices. If you're looking to establish or upgrade your online presence, whether you're showcasing your portfolio, promoting your services, or building your own brand, Squarespace has you covered. Head over to squarespace.com/GerardNeedham for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, use the code GerardNeedham to save 10% off your first purchase and website domain. So thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and when I edit, my goal is to refine what I already have. If the colors are way off in the original photo, no amount of editing is going to be able to save those colors. Instead, I'm tweaking and enhancing the colors to bring out the mood, the story, or the color harmony that I've already captured in camera. So let's jump onto the HSL panel to demonstrate what I mean by this. So this is a great demonstration on getting the colors right in camera. We have a yellow lifeguard tower contrasting well against the blue ocean and the blue sky, which is giving us complementary colors. Now, like I said before in color harmony, even though this blue is not directly opposite to yellow, it still makes complementary colors. But we can actually push this yellow lifeguard tower to a more orange in the HSL panel. So I'm under the hue section and I'm just going to click on these three little dots. And if I click around the yellow point and I drag it down, you can see that we've turned this into a more orange. And now we're getting the more traditional contrast of teal and orange. But what I can't do is I can't turn this orange into red, as it just makes the whole image start to fall apart and all of the surrounding hues in the sand and the grass is affected. So I'm just going to undo what I did before and go Control Z. I can make this a little bit more yellow, but as soon as I start to go past yellow, it's adding too much green into the yellow, and then again we're starting to affect the surrounding hues and the image falls apart. So that really just demonstrates that if the original color is too far off from what we're envisioning, no editing will save that photo, and if you do, it just feels forced and unnatural. That's why it's so important to learn color harmony and getting it right in camera or somewhat close, meaning that we can tweak the colors slightly. Next, I want to show you how you can actually create contrast with mixing the brightness of colors, which is called lumosity. So here's a photo that I recently took in Hokkaido, Japan, and this is edited, so I'm just going to reset that. And instantly you can see that after resetting the photo, we're getting a very dull green against a very vibrant and blue background, and we've lost that contrast like we did before. So what I want to show you is how powerful lumosity is in the HSL panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little dot here again, and I'm going to go around to where the leaves are here, and I'm going to bring the lumosity down of the green, and then I'm going to bring up the lumosity of the blue. And instantly you can see that we've got that contrast back. I'm just dialing down the white balance a little bit just to get the colors back to a neutral starting point. And then if we look at the before photo that I edited with my Lightroom presets that are linked down in the description down below, you can see that the green is really popping from the background compared to this image here. So what you can do is you can go into the hue, and especially for greens, I like to add quite a lot of blue into the greens, which make them pop a lot more. And then for the blue, I like to bring it down a little bit more to teal. And you can see that as we start to edit this photo, we're getting more color contrast as we go along. Now I feel like the blue is a little bit too saturated. So I'm just going to bring down the blue saturation and lift the green a little bit more just to make it more punchy and vibrant and stick out more. And without even editing the contrast, the shadows, and the highlights, we actually have a really good base and a good starting point from adjusting our hue, saturation, and lumosity. Now, lumosity is by adding black or adding white into the image. The more lumosity you give it, the less saturated, and then bringing down the lumosity makes that color more saturated. And if we go up here and we click all, and we're moving this blue slider, notice that when we let go, the saturation is never moving. So lumosity is for adding white into the image or adding black, which affects the saturation, and the saturation is an overall gradient that allows you to independently change those colors as you go. So I personally use saturation to make the colors more vibrant and intense, and I'll decrease the saturation to create a softer pastel look. Next, I want to show you why white balance is the first thing I adjust before slapping on my favorite preset, or adjusting any of the colors, because white balance sets the entire mood or the feeling of the image, and it's the base or foundations for color. So this is a photo that I took for a recent brand down in Sydney, Australia, and I want to make this photo feel more warm and more nostalgia, and I also want to have nice and flattering skin tones. For this type of photo, I would always just add a little bit of extra warmth and some extra magenta into the photo. And this really gives a great base to work from. So if we want to start editing our photo and bringing back that detail, if we want to go down and add a preset onto the photo and then adjust our exposure, we can do that. And then I have this other photo that I took in Tokyo at night, and adding warmth and magenta is really just going to make the image looking very gross and unnatural and not pleasing to the eye. So I will actually cool down the image quite a lot and add green into the photo to get a more darker cinematic mood out of the photo. And then using that as a base to start editing the photo and all the different colors. So like I said before, white balance is the base or the foundation of color. And exposure and white balance are the first thing I do before I start to do my creative look. But we can use masking to transform a flat image into a punchy image with color contrast. And I'll show you how to do that now. This is an edited photo, and I use this example before to show that this is a very monochromatic image, as the background is very similar to the skin tone and we're getting this more black to white pastel beige look. But in the editing process, if we come up to masking and we select the subject and we invert that mask, we can now change this from a monochromatic image into a complementary color scheme by adding a little bit of blue into the background and then adding a little bit of green as well. And you can see that now we're getting a blue hue in the background, and then we're getting more orange skin tone. And this is the classic orange and teal look. Now, personally for me, I find that this is a little bit too strong. So what I do is I just dial down the saturation, and this is just affecting the background, so not the subject. And then I will just refine the color a little bit more just to add a little bit more teal into the background. And if we turn off the mask and turn it back on, you can already see that we're getting much more separation from the model to the background with color contrast. All right guys, so that's everything that I can provide you about color theory and color harmony. And I really want to illustrate the point of getting it right in camera is so important, but you can also tweak the colors in Lightroom and post to get the overall feeling and look out of your image. Now guys, if you do like the way that I edit my photos, I do sell Lightroom presets, which are linked in the description down below, and I've used them across a variety of camera brands including Sony, Nikon, Fujifilm, Canon, Hasselblad recently. Again, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and if you want to learn how to get the best colors out of your camera despite your camera brand, go check out this video right here. And if you want to learn how to get the best skin tones despite your camera brand, go check out this video right here. Otherwise, go enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.